Today on the show, a couple of recent court cases could require religious schools to abide by federal rules related to sex and gender. What would that mean for Christian schools? Will those decisions stand on appeal? We'll talk about it. In addition, cases of monkeypox have now been discovered in every state in the country. How concerned should you be? We'll talk about that a little later. Also, there's a lot of pressure these days for Christians to hide. Dr. Erwin Lutzer has written a book in which he says that's not the right response. He'll stop by later in the program for what is sure to be an informative and engaging conversation. But our headline today, President Biden is expected to reveal tomorrow his long-standing plan to eliminate some student loan debt. While nothing is confirmed, reports indicate that he plans to cancel up to $10,000 in student loan debt for anyone making less than $125,000 a year, at an estimated cost of $330 billion. How will this affect the average American taxpayer? Who will fit the bill? Joining me now to discuss this is economist Stephen Moore, who's a senior fellow at FreedomWorks and co-founder of the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. Stephen, good to see you today.
Hi, Joseph.
What's your reaction to this news? I know there's been a lot of chatter about this. It's not completely surprising, but what's your economist response to this idea that President Biden is going to cancel up to $10,000 in student loan debt?
Well, even the way you put it, is sort of playing into the hands of the enemy. When you say cancel the debt doesn't really get canceled. It just means they shift the debt off of the backs of the people who took out the loans to you and me and everyone else who's a taxpayer. I think it's outrageous. I think it's an injustice. I think it is rewarding people for bad behavior. If you have a debt and you don't repay it, we used to call those kind of people deadbeats. And so the idea that we're teaching a whole generation that you don't have to pay back your debts is just, I think, irresponsible. But more importantly, it's completely unfair to the people who did pay back their student loans the way an upstanding person would do. If you loan me money, I agree to pay you back, I should pay you back the money. And so given the fact that we already have a $24 trillion national debt, the idea of adding $300 billion more debt is astonishingly fiscally imprudent.
Well, I accept your correction on the phrasing of my question.
Yeah.
Now,
it's a taxpayer bailout. It's a taxpayer bailout. That's what we should call it.
Yeah, that's fair. And we have experienced bailouts in different contexts. And so we are familiar with that. But I think that is helpful phrasing to understand what we're doing in many ways, like we bailed out banks who we decided were too big to bail. But that's certainly not the problem necessarily of these student loan holders, but we are bailing them out to be sure. Why has this become, and it has become, a huge issue on the left? For years, there's been this drumbeat for this cancellation of student debt. In your judgment, how did that become such a hot topic on the left?
What the left wants, they wanted this for 25 years, is free college. They want the taxpayers to pay for everyone's college. And this is a big, big step in that direction. I mean, Joseph, think about this. If the president goes through with this policy, how many people in the future do you think will ever repay a student loan?
It's a fair question.
Zero. Yeah, right. Zero. The answer is zero. No, you'd be a fool to pay back your loan if the government's going to forgive you for the debt. So I don't know but they understand that they're not this stupid. What they essentially want is for everybody to just have free college education and taxpayers pay for it. You think college is expensive now, which it is. Every college in America should cost about half of what it does. If you have the taxpayers paying the tab, you're going to see tuitions go to $100,000 a year. So this is part of this industrial complex between the big universities, the left, which wants everybody to have these, quote, free college educations. And then kids come out with degrees in sociology and ethnic studies and philosophy and things that they can't get a job for. And so you can tell I'm angry about it because I think it's just really unfair to the people who did do the stand-up thing and made the financial sacrifice to do what's right, and that is to pay back the money that they owe.
Stephen, as someone with a sociology degree as an undergraduate, I accept that correction as well.
Well, you've done
it wasn't
right.
necessarily
You've
a great
done
plan.
fine, right?
Well,
But,
law school
look at
helped,
some of
but
these
once you get a
degrees,
sociology degree, you've got to do something else. But that's a good word of wisdom to those out there considering their future. But Stephen, not everybody is as pessimistic about this. Representative Jamal Bowman thinks this is precisely the thing that the economy needs right now. Let's play clip one.
If we cancel student debt outright or a large chunk of it, people will then feel more confident in starting families or investing in the market or starting their own businesses, and would really inject capital into the economy, which is what we need now at this time.
Stephen Moore, what's your reaction to that?
First of all, one of the first rules of life is you never want to reward bad behavior, right? I mean, that's pretty simple. You don't reward bad behavior. It's bad behavior if you don't pay back the loan that you owe. And what kind of lesson are we teaching people? I mean, my goodness, by that logic of that congressman, I shouldn't have to pay back my mortgage. Think about I might be able to start a business if I didn't have to pay my mortgage or if I didn't have to pay my credit card debt. I mean, this is, I think, very illogical argument. And I think that we need now. Look, I do think college is way, way too expensive. And if why should the taxpayers be on the hook for this? If the people who are kind of collaborators in this scam are the universities themselves, the universities should pay the money back, not the taxpayers.
And that leads to an interesting question, because right now there's $1.5 trillion in student loan debt in America. That's a huge number. And there are a lot of people saddled by student loan debt. One of the little known facts about student loan debt is that it is not dischargeable in bankruptcy, which means when the government guarantees that the payment to these universities and those debts are not dischargeable, there is no risk to the institutions for taking barely or unqualified students, giving them degrees in something that will not likely lead to an income that can return on that investment, but the university is guaranteed its money nonetheless. Do you think the situation could be improved if there was a change in the law that required universities to consider the risk that they were taking in giving students these degrees and these loans to make sure that we may not make these loans if they can't pay them back?
Yeah, I'd be interested in that kind of proposal. I would propose three things. Number one, there's a very simple solution to the issue of how we pay for college. Every college student should work 20 hours a week. And if they work 20 hours a week while they're in school, then God knows college students have nothing but time on their hands. They would be much more productive. And we wouldn't have to. Are you familiar with a school called College of the Ozarks?
I sure am, and I love it very much.
Yeah. So why can't every college be like that, where you work? For people who don't know what I'm talking about, that's a school where the tuition is zero because every student pays for their own tuition by working. I mean, my gosh, these are 21 and 22-year-old kids. The idea that they can't work 20 hours a week. They're too busy at the fraternity parties and getting drunk on the weekends and so on. They could do it. And by the way, there's an old saying, I think it might be Ben Franklin, but anything easily attained is lightly regarded. And the best way to make sure the kids are getting a good education and they're getting their money's worth is to make them work to get the education.
I think that's a really good point, and I am the father of a high school senior now, and we are having these conversations because the return on investment in many people's experience on college is not good. And so one of the reasons to make that return on investment better is to make sure that the cost is low. It certainly has advantages, but not at any cost. Now, Stephen, is it too cynical to think that this might be in part an election ploy, because we are now months away from a midterm election? Is that relevant in any way to this, do you think?
Yeah, I get it. I've been asked that question a lot today as the president's announcement was made. And I think, yes, I do believe the Democrats think this is a way to win votes. But I got to tell you something, Joseph. People are really, really angry about this. This is an extremely unpopular idea with most Americans who believe in justice, who believe in fair play, who believe that you don't reward people for bad behavior. Yeah. It's totally contrary to sort of the American ideal. So I think it's going to, if it is being done for political purposes, I think it's going to boomerang against the Democrats.
And Stephen, to that point, I know that there's this sense, the argument has been made that people who go to college, they have a higher than average income.
That's right.
And therefore, they are in a better position to pay these bills. And what we're doing here is we're actually shifting that burden to those who do not have a college degree, who actually have lower incomes. Is that a fair description of what's happening here?
It sure is. Thank you for bringing that up. I meant to mention it and I forgot, but that's a really key point. The left loves to talk about fairness. They're basically taxing middle income, blue collar workers, many of whom didn't go to college. And those people have to then subsidize, people oftentimes from upper middle income and even wealthy families for their student tuition. It's completely unfair. It's like Robin Hood in reverse. We're robbing the poor to pay the rich.
Stephen Moore, when do we run out of money? We have all of this debt already. We've spent an additional, $7 trillion, I think, since 2000 on the national debt. And now we're just deciding to shift the burden and let the taxpayers take on these private student loans for people. Is there any end in sight?
This is the thing that's keeping me up at night, Joseph, as a fiscal policy expert. We had this laughable behavior, theory that came out of the left a few years ago, something called modern monetary theory. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes, but I'm not an economist, so I'm going to let you explain it.
So modern monetary theory is a laughable, idiotic theory that the U.S. government can just borrow and borrow and borrow and spend whatever it wants. Right. And anybody with a sixth grade education knows that's a foolish and dangerous concept. But the Democrats have embraced it. And they really believe this. That's why you played that clip from the congressman. We could just spend and spend and spend and give people money, and it's going to stimulate the economy. They really believe that. And of course, I think most rational people know that is a road to ruin. So I'm extremely nervous about what they're doing to our economy. You're right. Just since 2000, we've added $6 or $7 trillion to our debt. Just in the last 3 weeks, they just passed a $600 billion spending bill. Now they want $300 billion more. Last year, Biden spent and borrowed $3 trillion. These numbers are so large, people's heads are probably spinning around. But it is going to bankrupt this great country of ours if we stay on this path.
Stephen Moore, FreedomWorks, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.